On a seemingly ordinary Tuesday, Adam Torres found himself caught in a whirlwind of unexpected events. A seasoned FBI agent with a reputation for integrity, Adam had spent years working undercover, navigating the complexities of criminal networks. He was dedicated to bringing justice to those who had fallen victim to crime, but on that fateful day he became a victim himself. After a long day at work, Adam was driving home through a quiet neighborhood when he noticed flashing lights in his rearview mirror. At first he thought nothing of it, perhaps it was a routine traffic stop. However, when the police officer approached his vehicle, Adam's heart sank. The officer, a tall man with a commanding presence and an air of arrogance, leaned toward Adam's window. "License and registration," the officer demanded, his tone lacking any trace of courtesy. Adam complied, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. He sensed something was off. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Just doing my job," the officer replied dismissively, barely glancing at Adam's credentials. "I need to know why you're driving in this neighborhood." Adam felt a rush of frustration. "I live here. I'm just returning home from work," he said, hoping to diffuse the tension. The officer smirked, leaning in closer. "You don't look like you belong here," he sneered, his words dripping with condescension. Adam felt his cheeks flush. He was no stranger to prejudice, but this blatant disrespect was infuriating. He could feel his hands clenching the steering wheel. "I assure you I have every right to be here," he said, trying to keep his composure. But the officer continued, "We'll see about that. Step out of the vehicle." A chill ran down Adam's spine. He knew he had to tread carefully. "Am I being detained?" he asked, his voice steady but tense. "Just get out," the officer barked, signaling for him to exit the car. Adam hesitated, feeling the weight of the situation. The officer's partner stood nearby, arms crossed, watching with an air of indifference. As Adam stepped out, the officer circled around him, looking him up and down like he was a suspect. "You fit the profile of someone we've been watching," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "What profile?" Adam shot back, unable to suppress his anger. "Let's just say you don't look trustworthy," the officer replied, a smirk playing on his lips. In that moment Adam's heart raced. He was an agent of the law, dedicated to protecting the community, yet here he was, being treated like a criminal. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" he asked, trying to maintain his authority. But the officer only laughed. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, a nobody trying to act tough. You think your badge makes you special?" As the tension escalated, Adam's frustration boiled over. He felt humiliated, surrounded by an authority figure who cared nothing for justice. "Just because I don't fit your stereotype doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong," Adam retorted, his voice rising. The officer's expression hardened. "You're making this worse for yourself. I can arrest you for resisting." Adam's breath hitched in his throat. He realized that logic and reason would not prevail in this situation. "Fine," Adam said, trying to defuse the confrontation. "Do what you must. But I promise you this isn't over." The officer smirked, enjoying his perceived victory. "You think you're tough, huh? Let's see how tough you are in a cell." As Adam stood there, facing the humiliation of a baseless accusation, he felt a storm of emotions. Anger, frustration, and disbelief all washed over him, and he knew he had to find a way to make things right. But little did the officer know that Adam was not just any driver. He was an undercover FBI agent, and this encounter was about to unravel in ways they could never have imagined. The confrontation escalated rapidly as the officer's partner stepped forward, his presence adding to the intensity of the moment. "What's going on here?" the partner asked, eyeing Adam with skepticism. "This guy thinks he can just roll through here without a care in the world," the first officer replied, crossing his arms triumphantly. "He claims he lives here, but I'm not buying it." The partner raised an eyebrow, glancing at Adam. "And you are?" "Just a guy driving home," Adam said, trying to keep his voice steady. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. The second officer scoffed. "Just a guy, huh? What do you do for a living? Steal? Deal?" Adam clenched his fists, the accusation stinging more than he expected. "I work for the FBI," he said, his voice firm. "I'm an agent." The officers exchanged skeptical glances, clearly unconvinced. "Right. And I'm the King of England," the first officer mocked, leaning in closer. "Let me guess, you're undercover for a drug bust?" "Enough." Adam snapped, frustration spilling over. "You're being ridiculous. Just check my ID. I have nothing to hide." The partner shrugged. "Why should we? You're acting suspiciously. Do you have any idea how many drug dealers we see in this neighborhood?" Adam shook his head, incredulous. This isn't about the neighborhood, it's about your prejudice. You have no reason to treat me like this. The first officer leaned in, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. You think you're special, huh? You're not the first FBI agent to try to pull a fast one on us. Adam felt the world closing in around him. The humiliation of the situation was overwhelming. They were treating him like a criminal simply because of their assumptions. Listen, you can either do your job properly or you can waste my time, Adam said, trying to assert his authority. I'm not the enemy here. But the officers were unfazed. The first officer turned to his partner, clearly enjoying the power trip. Let's put him in cuffs and teach him a lesson. The words hit Adam like a punch to the gut. You can't do this, he said, voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. You have no grounds to detain me. The partner stepped closer, invading Adam's personal space. You should have thought about that before you started acting all high and mighty. We don't take kindly to your type around here. Adam's heart raced. He felt a wave of desperation wash over him. The adrenaline surged, mixing with indignation. He wanted to fight back, to expose the injustice of the situation, but he also knew he had to tread carefully. Cuff me if you must, Adam said, struggling to maintain his composure. But know this, you're making a huge mistake. The first officer's smirk deepened as he reached for the handcuffs. Let's see how tough you really are, agent. As the cold metal closed around his wrists, Adam's mind raced. The humiliation was unbearable, but deeper than that was a fear for the future. This was not just about him, it was about the reputation of the FBI and the trust people placed in law enforcement. As they led him to the patrol car, Adam felt a burning determination rise within him. He couldn't let this stand. He would find a way to expose the truth. In the back seat of the patrol car, Adam could hear snippets of the officers' conversation, their laughter echoing in the confined space. They were reveling in their perceived victory, but Adam was no longer just a victim. He was a man on a mission. I'll show them what it means to be an FBI agent, he thought, gripping the cold metal of the seat. The world outside the car blurred as they drove through the streets, but in that moment, all Adam could focus on was the injustice he had to face. The battle was far from over, and he was determined to fight back, not just for himself but for all those who had been wronged by those who abused their power. The patrol car rattled as it made its way to the station, the sound of tires rolling over pavement echoing Adam's escalating anxiety. He sat in the back seat, hands cuffed, mind racing. It felt surreal, the weight of the situation bearing down on him. Here he was, an FBI agent, reduced to a suspect by two men who wielded their authority like a weapon. As they pulled into the station's parking lot, Adam's heart raced. He could feel the heat of anger rising within him, tempered by a sense of impending clarity. He had been trained to handle high-pressure situations, but this one felt particularly personal. The officers stepped out, exchanging jokes that made Adam's blood boil. He caught snippets of their conversation, references to putting him in his place and showing him who's really in charge. The disdain dripped from their voices, and Adam felt a burning need to confront the injustice head-on. As the first officer opened the door, he grabbed Adam's arm roughly. "Let's go, tough guy," he sneered, dragging Adam from the car. "Watch it," Adam retorted, glaring at the officer. "You have no right to treat me like this." The officer merely chuckled, a mocking sound that grated on Adam's nerves. "And you have no right to be here acting like you own the place." Inside the station, Adam was led through a maze of desks and bustling officers, all too familiar with the routine but unfamiliar with the humiliation he felt. Heads turned as people noticed him being escorted in handcuffs. Whispers erupted in hushed tones, and Adam felt his heart sink further. "Look at that," one officer said to another. "What did he do to get here?" Ignoring the stares, Adam focused on the task ahead. He needed to clear his name, but first he needed to get out of these cuffs. The first officer dragged him toward a small interrogation room, the harsh fluorescent lights glaring down like spotlights. Adam's resolve hardened. This was not just about him anymore, this was about standing up against the abuse of power. As they entered the room, the officer shoved Adam into a chair, the metal biting into his skin. "Sit tight," he said, closing the door with a loud thud. "I'll be back with some paperwork." Adam leaned back in the chair, breathing deeply to center himself. He had to remain calm. He couldn't let his emotions dictate his actions. Alone in the room, he scanned the surroundings. A small window offered a glimpse of the world outside, a world that felt increasingly distant. But with every passing second, his determination grew stronger. He reached for his phone, hoping against hope that it hadn't been confiscated. To his relief, it was still in his pocket. With his heart racing, he quickly sent a message to his supervisor, explaining the situation. He knew he needed backup and fast. Moments later, the door creaked open, and the first officer stepped back in, his expression unreadable. "Hope you're enjoying your little time out," he said with a smirk. "You won't be getting out of here anytime soon." Adam met his gaze, unwavering. "You think this is over? You think I'm just going to sit here and take this?" The officer shrugged, clearly amused. "What are you going to do about it? You're just some nobody we picked up off the street." That was when Adam felt it, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "You really don't know who you're dealing with," he said, his voice steady. The officer scoffed. "Oh please. What's your big plan? You gonna pull out your badge and demand respect?" Adam leaned forward, intensity flashing in his eyes. "I don't need to demand respect. I'm not just some guy. I'm an FBI agent. You have no idea what you've just done." The officer paused, his smirk faltering for the first time. "Yeah, right. You expect me to believe that?" Before Adam could respond, the door swung open again, this time revealing a tall woman in a crisp suit. It was his supervisor, her expression a mix of concern and authority. "Agent Torres," she exclaimed, stepping into the room. "What's going on here?" Adam's heart lifted at the sight of her. "I was wrongfully detained. They didn't even check my credentials before dragging me in here." The officer's bravado quickly evaporated as he faced her. He was acting suspiciously. "We thought he was a drug dealer." His supervisor raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "And you thought it was a good idea to treat him like this? Do you have any idea who he is?" The room grew tense as realization dawned on the officer. Adam could see the shift in his demeanor, the color draining from his face. "No. I mean he just—" "You better get your story straight," she interrupted, voice sharp as a knife. "You're going to regret this." As she spoke, Adam felt a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, someone recognized the truth. This wasn't just about him anymore, it was about accountability. The officer fumbled for words, his confidence shattered. "I was just following protocol." "Following protocol?" she shot back. "You violated every protocol in the book. You'll be hearing from internal affairs." Adam sat back, a mix of satisfaction and disbelief coursing through him. This was the turning point he had been waiting for. As his supervisor turned to him, he felt a newfound sense of empowerment. "Thank you," he said, gratitude evident in his voice. "We'll get this sorted out," she assured him. "I won't let this go unchecked." In that moment, Adam knew that the fight for justice was far from over, but he was no longer just a victim. He was an agent ready to reclaim his dignity and hold those accountable for their actions. As the tension in the interrogation room began to dissipate, Adam took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the unjust treatment start to lift. His supervisor, aware of the gravity of the situation, quickly motioned for the officer to step outside, leaving Adam momentarily alone with his thoughts. In the silence that followed, Adam's mind raced. The humiliation of the past hours replayed in his head like a relentless loop. He could still feel the cold metal of the handcuffs around his wrists, the sneers of the officers echoing in his ears. It was a painful reminder of how quickly perceptions could shift, how easily someone could be reduced to a stereotype. But this wasn't just about him anymore, it was about the system that allowed such behavior to persist. He had dedicated his life to fighting crime and upholding justice, only to find himself on the receiving end of the very prejudices he worked to dismantle. Moments later, the door creaked open again, and his supervisor stepped back in, her expression serious. "We need to talk about what happened here, Adam." "Yeah," he replied, his voice heavy with emotion. "I can't believe this is how I was treated." She nodded, taking a seat across from him. "This is unacceptable. We have protocols for a reason, and what those officers did was completely out of line." Adam leaned forward, the urgency of the situation sharpening his focus. "I don't want this to just be swept under the rug. I want to make sure they face consequences for their actions." His supervisor met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. "We will. I'll initiate an internal investigation, and I'll personally ensure that the officers involved are held accountable." "Good," Adam said, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "They need to understand that their actions have real consequences. This isn't just about me, it's about every person they've wrongfully accused or humiliated." His supervisor leaned back, assessing him. "You know this could get messy, right? There might be pushback from their department, especially if they have a history of this kind of behavior." "I don't care," Adam said, his voice steady. "This isn't just about the investigation. It's about changing a culture that allows officers to act like this without fear of repercussions." As they spoke, the door opened again, and the first officer from earlier stepped back into the room, his bravado visibly diminished. I just wanted to apologize for how this went down," he stammered, the mockery that had once colored his tone now absent. Adam met his gaze, feeling a surge of indignation. An apology doesn't change what you did. You humiliated me in front of your partner and a bunch of other officers. You need to understand that your actions have real impacts. The officer's eyes dropped to the floor, the weight of Adam's words hitting hard. I know. I messed up. I was just following what I thought was right. But I see that I was wrong. Adam felt a flicker of satisfaction but quickly suppressed it. An apology was a start, but it wasn't enough. Being a police officer means upholding the law, not bending it to fit your assumptions. You're supposed to protect people, not bully them. His supervisor interjected, her voice firm. We're going to ensure you both understand the importance of this. You'll be receiving additional training on racial bias and profiling. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again. The officer nodded slowly, regret evident in his posture. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. After the officer left, Adam turned to his supervisor, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. I want to make sure this is a teaching moment, not just for him but for the entire department. We will, she promised. This is an opportunity to start a conversation about bias in policing, and we'll use it to advocate for better training and oversight. Feeling a sense of purpose wash over him, Adam nodded. Let's make sure we get this right. We need to ensure that people are held accountable and that this culture of prejudice changes. As they began to formulate a plan, Adam felt a flicker of hope. He might have been subjected to humiliation, but he was turning that experience into something meaningful. With a renewed sense of determination, Adam knew that the fight for justice was just beginning. He was no longer just an agent facing a personal battle. He was now a catalyst for change, ready to take on the system and ensure that no one else had to endure what he had. The following days felt like a whirlwind as Adam and his supervisor initiated the investigation. News of the incident spread quickly through the department, and Adam knew that there was no turning back. He had a mission now, not just to clear his name but to bring about meaningful change. In the days that followed, Adam found himself juggling interviews with internal affairs and conversations with his colleagues. The atmosphere was tense, the unspoken ramifications of the incident hanging heavy in the air. Whispers echoed through the halls of the precinct, some sympathetic, others skeptical. Did you really think you could just pull the FBI card and walk away? One officer remarked during a break in the break room. Adam felt a mixture of anger and exhaustion. I didn't pull anything. I was doing my job, he replied, keeping his voice steady. And it's time we recognize that this kind of behavior is unacceptable. As the investigation progressed, Adam found himself reliving the moment of his wrongful detainment over and over again. The humiliation still stung, but with each recounting, his resolve strengthened. He was determined to ensure that no one else faced what he had endured. Adam's supervisor arranged a meeting with the chief of police, and Adam sat in the conference room, heart racing as the chief entered. The man exuded authority, and Adam felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension as he prepared to present his case. Thank you for coming, the chief said, taking a seat at the head of the table. I understand we have a serious situation on our hands. Adam leaned forward, ready to speak. This isn't just about what happened to me. It's about a pattern of behavior that needs to be addressed. We can't allow officers to act based on assumptions and stereotypes. The chief nodded, taking notes. I agree, and we'll be conducting a full investigation into the actions of the officers involved. However, I need to stress the importance of maintaining our relationships within the community. We can't afford to lose public trust. Adam felt a surge of frustration. But at what cost? If we prioritize appearances over accountability, we're failing our duty. We have to be willing to confront these issues head-on. The chief regarded him thoughtfully. You make valid points, Agent Torres. But we need to approach this carefully. Any misstep could undermine our efforts. Adam nodded, understanding the delicate balance they had to maintain. I know it's complex, but we can't shy away from the uncomfortable conversations. We need to hold ourselves accountable. After the meeting, Adam felt a renewed sense of purpose. The chief was receptive, and he hoped that this was the beginning of real change. However, he knew that the path ahead would be challenging. As the investigation unfolded, Adam found himself attending training sessions focused on bias and profiling. He sat in a room with fellow officers, engaged in discussions that felt both necessary and uncomfortable. Let's be real, one officer said during a heated discussion. We all have biases. It's part of being human. Adam nodded, recognizing the truth in those words. But acknowledging our biases doesn't give us an excuse to act on them. We have to hold each other accountable and commit to doing better. Throughout the training, Adam's determination only grew. He spoke passionately about his experience, sharing the pain and humiliation he had endured. "I don't want any of you to feel what I felt," he said, his voice strong. "We have a responsibility to our community. If we can't protect them, then what are we doing here?" Gradually, Adam noticed a shift in the room. The conversations became more genuine, more open. His colleagues began to share their experiences, revealing moments of doubt, fear, and confusion in their own encounters with the community. By the end of the training, Adam felt a sense of camaraderie that he hadn't expected. They were all in this together, striving for a common goal. And in that moment, Adam realized that change was possible. It wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to confront their biases and challenge the status quo. As the investigation continued, Adam remained focused, driven by the desire to create a safer, more equitable environment for everyone. He met regularly with his supervisor to discuss progress, and each meeting brought a renewed sense of hope. But then the unexpected happened. During one of their meetings, Adam's supervisor entered with a serious expression. "We have a lead on a case of excessive force tied to the officers involved in your incident. It's crucial we handle this delicately." Adam's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? Are they involved in something more serious?" His supervisor nodded. "There's evidence of a pattern of behavior that could indicate a deeper issue within their unit. We need to gather more information, but it's clear this is more than just a one-off incident." Adam felt a mix of apprehension and determination. "If they're abusing their power, we need to expose it. We can't let this slide." "Agreed," his supervisor replied. "But we have to proceed cautiously. This could affect a lot of people, including the community we serve." As Adam processed this new development, he felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, he was fighting for the integrity of the entire department and the trust of the community. With this new information, Adam understood that the fight for justice was far from over. He was ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead, fueled by the belief that change was possible. Together, they would take a stand against the misuse of power and work to create a future where justice truly served everyone. The atmosphere in the precinct was electric, the anticipation of uncovering the truth creating an undercurrent of tension among the officers. Adam, armed with new information and a fierce resolve, was determined to push forward. He understood the stakes had risen. It was no longer just about his humiliation. It was about rooting out systemic issues that threatened the integrity of the department. In the days that followed, Adam and his supervisor began to build a case against the officers involved in his wrongful detention. They pored over records, surveillance footage, and officer reports, looking for patterns of misconduct. Every lead was a potential breakthrough, and every detail could change the narrative. During one particularly late evening, Adam found himself huddled over his desk, reviewing video footage from a nearby gas station. He squinted at the screen, replaying a clip where the two officers from his incident were seen interacting with a group of individuals. The body language was aggressive, the tone confrontational. "Look at this," Adam said, calling his supervisor over. "These officers are engaging with people in a way that clearly shows they're not there to help." His supervisor leaned closer, her eyes narrowing as she analyzed the footage. "This is concerning. We need to get access to the reports from these encounters. If they're treating civilians like this regularly, it could explain a lot." With renewed urgency, they reached out to the community, seeking testimonies from those who had crossed paths with the officers. They spoke to shop owners, residents, and bystanders, piecing together a mosaic of experiences that painted a troubling picture of the officers' behavior. One evening, after a long day of gathering information, Adam found himself speaking with a woman outside a local cafe. She had witnessed the officers' confrontations and was eager to share her story. "I've seen those guys before," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "They always come in with an attitude like they're ready to start a fight. It's intimidating. You don't want to be caught in their sights." Adam nodded, taking notes. "Can you tell me about a specific encounter?" She sighed, glancing around as if worried someone might overhear. "There was a guy in our neighborhood, just hanging out with friends, and they treated him like a criminal. They shoved him against a wall and yelled at him for no reason. It was scary." As she recounted her experience, Adam felt a mix of anger and sadness. This was more than just a few isolated incidents. It was a pattern that needed to be addressed. "Thank you for sharing this. Your voice matters, and we need to make sure others hear it too." As they continued to gather testimonies, Adam realized that the stories were connecting dots he hadn't anticipated. Each account reinforced the need for change within the department, and he was growing increasingly determined to see this through. Weeks passed, and Adam's commitment only deepened. He spent long hours sifting through evidence and meeting with community members, his drive fueled by the desire to hold the officers accountable and create lasting change. One evening, while reviewing notes in his office, Adam received a call from his supervisor. "I need you to come to the conference room. We have something significant." Heart racing, Adam made his way to the conference room, where he found his supervisor standing with a few other senior officers. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. "We've received more reports, and it appears that the 2 officers involved in your detainment have been cited for excessive force in several instances," his supervisor began, her expression serious. "This is not just about your case, it's indicative of a larger problem." Adam felt a surge of adrenaline at the implications. "What does this mean for the investigation?" "It means we need to take immediate action," another officer interjected. "We can't let this behavior continue without repercussions. It's time to confront them directly." As they discussed the next steps, Adam's mind raced with the possibilities. They needed to confront the officers, to make them understand the gravity of their actions. But he also felt a sense of trepidation. Confronting someone in a position of power was never easy, especially when they had already shown themselves to be arrogant and dismissive. "Let's set up a meeting with them," Adam proposed, his voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in his stomach. "We need to give them a chance to explain themselves, but we also need to make it clear that their behavior is unacceptable." The group nodded in agreement, and Adam could feel the tension in the room shift. They were ready to take a stand, to confront the uncomfortable truths that had been festering for too long. In the days leading up to the meeting, Adam prepared meticulously. He reviewed all the evidence they had gathered, rehearsed his points, and anticipated the officers' reactions. He understood that this was a pivotal moment, not just for himself but for the community they served. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Adam entered the conference room, heart pounding, as the 2 officers took their seats. They appeared confident, but Adam could see a flicker of unease in their eyes as they glanced at the assembled group of higher-ups. "Thank you for being here," Adam began, his voice firm. "We're here today to discuss the recent reports of excessive force tied to your conduct during interactions with civilians." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, and the bravado they had displayed during their previous interactions began to crack. "I don't know what you're talking about," one officer blurted out, crossing his arms defensively. "We're just doing our jobs." Adam leaned forward, determined to keep his composure. "Doing your job shouldn't involve intimidation or unnecessary force. We've gathered testimonies that illustrate a clear pattern of behavior that is both alarming and unacceptable." The atmosphere in the room grew tense as the officers realized they were being confronted with undeniable evidence. "I don't think you understand the pressures we face," the other officer replied, attempting to deflect responsibility. "Sometimes we have to act quickly to ensure safety." Adam shook his head, frustration mounting. "That doesn't excuse abusive behavior. We need to uphold our responsibility to protect and serve, not intimidate and bully. It's time for accountability." As the meeting continued, Adam felt a wave of empowerment wash over him. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a stand for justice, a moment where they were all willing to confront the uncomfortable truths of their profession. With every point he made, he could see the officers squirming in their seats. They were being forced to face the reality of their actions, and Adam knew that this was only the beginning. The fight for change was far from over, but they were finally on the right path. As the meeting wrapped up, Adam felt a sense of hope. They were making progress, and together, they would work to ensure that the department could be held accountable to the community it served. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the department was buzzing with discussions. Adam could feel the ripple effects of their meeting, and while some officers expressed skepticism, others began to recognize the importance of accountability. There was a sense that change was not just possible, it was necessary. As days turned into weeks, Adam dedicated himself to fostering open dialogues within the precinct. He initiated forums where officers could voice their concerns, share experiences, and discuss the complexities of policing in their community. The response was mixed, but Adam remained resolute, believing that every conversation was a step toward a better understanding. During one such forum, Adam stood in front of his colleagues, the energy in the room palpable. "We're all here because we care about our community and our roles within it," he began. "But we have to acknowledge that some of our practices can alienate the very people we're supposed to protect." An officer in the back raised a hand. "But what do we do when we feel threatened? Sometimes it feels like we're being asked to put ourselves in danger." Adam nodded, understanding the fear behind the question. "I get that. But being proactive means building trust. If we create an environment where people feel safe reporting issues, we reduce the chances of confrontations escalating. It's about creating partnerships, not adversarial relationships." The conversation continued, with various officers sharing their thoughts and experiences. Slowly, the walls of defensiveness began to crumble. They started to see that they could be agents of change rather than just enforcers of the status quo. Meanwhile, Adam's supervisor informed him of an upcoming community outreach program designed to bridge the gap between the police and local residents. "I think you should be a key part of this initiative," she said. "Your experience could help guide our approach." "I'd be honored," Adam replied, excitement coursing through him. "It's time we start listening to the community and understanding their concerns firsthand." The outreach program aimed to create safe spaces where residents could come together with officers to share their experiences and perspectives. Adam envisioned community meetings, workshops, and even fun events where they could engage with the public in a positive way. As the program rolled out, Adam felt a sense of hope and purpose. The first event was scheduled at a local park and he worked tirelessly to promote it. Flyers were distributed, social media posts were shared, and he even visited local businesses to spread the word. On the day of the event, the sun shone brightly, and the park buzzed with activity. Families gathered, children played, and local vendors set up booths, creating a festive atmosphere. Adam stood near the entrance, greeting residents as they arrived. "Hey there," he called to a group of teens walking in. "We've got games, food, and a chance to chat with the officers. We want to hear what you have to say." The teens exchanged glances, some apprehensive and others curious. "Will they really listen?" one of them asked, skepticism evident in their tone. Adam nodded, sincere in his commitment. "Absolutely. We want to hear your thoughts and concerns. It's time to start building trust." As the day unfolded, conversations began to flow. Officers mingled with residents, discussing everything from community safety to local youth programs. Adam facilitated discussions, ensuring that everyone had a voice and that concerns were met with empathy. During a breakout session, a local mother spoke candidly about her experiences with the police. "My son has been stopped multiple times for no reason," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He's scared of the police and that breaks my heart. We want to feel safe, not hunted." The room fell silent, and Adam could feel the weight of her words. "Thank you for sharing that," he replied gently. "It's important for us to understand how these experiences affect our community. We're here to change that narrative." As the discussions continued, Adam was struck by how many people expressed a desire for understanding and collaboration. The officers, too, began to see the humanity behind the concerns, recognizing that building trust was a two-way street. Towards the end of the event, Adam gathered everyone for a closing discussion. "We've heard some powerful stories today," he said, addressing the group. "Change won't happen overnight, but if we commit to these conversations, we can start to build bridges." The response was overwhelmingly positive, and Adam felt a sense of pride as he watched officers and residents exchanging contact information, promising to continue the dialogue beyond the event. As the sun set over the park, casting a warm glow on the gathering, Adam felt a surge of hope. They had taken the first step toward healing the divide, and he was excited about the potential for change. However, Adam knew that the road ahead would be challenging. Skepticism would remain, and not everyone would be ready to embrace the shift. But he was prepared to face whatever obstacles lay ahead, armed with the knowledge that progress was possible when people chose to engage in honest conversations. With the community outreach program set to continue, Adam felt energized. He knew that as they forged ahead, they would continue to face difficult conversations, but together they could create a culture of understanding, respect, and accountability. As the night drew to a close, Adam walked away from the park, his heart full. He was no longer just an agent fighting for his dignity. He was part of a movement striving for justice, transparency, and unity in a community that desperately needed it. As the community outreach program gained momentum, Adam felt a sense of accomplishment. The initial skepticism from some officers had slowly transformed into curiosity and even enthusiasm. They were beginning to realize the power of engagement and communication. However, not everyone within the department was on board with the changes Adam was advocating. One morning, while going through his emails, Adam received a message from an officer who had been notably resistant to the outreach initiatives. The officer, Rick, had a reputation for being arrogant and dismissive of community concerns. The subject line read, "Let's talk about reality." Adam opened the email with caution. Rick's tone was confrontational, as he wrote about the challenges officers faced on the streets and questioned whether outreach programs would actually change anything. "The real world isn't about talking, it's about surviving," he stated bluntly. Feeling a mix of frustration and determination, Adam decided to approach Rick directly. They met in a small conference room, the atmosphere thick with tension. Adam initiated the conversation, trying to keep his tone calm. I appreciate you taking the time to meet. I know you have concerns about the outreach program. Concerns? More like doubts, Rick replied, leaning back in his chair. You think a few community events will magically fix years of distrust? That's naive. Adam took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. It's not about fixing everything overnight. It's about starting a conversation. If we don't engage with the community, how do we expect to understand their concerns? We need to create an environment where they feel safe talking to us. Rick scoffed. You think they'll just open up to us because we're smiling and handing out flyers? This isn't a PR stunt. It's about being tough on crime. It's about balance, Adam countered. We need to enforce the law, but we also need to build relationships. If we're constantly at odds with the community, we'll only make our jobs harder in the long run. Rick's expression hardened. Look, I've been in this job long enough to know that most people don't want to cooperate with us. They just want to complain and play the victim. Adam felt his patience wearing thin but remained composed. You're right, some people might resist. But we can't generalize. There are countless individuals who want to work with us. We have to meet them halfway. As they continued to discuss the outreach program, Adam realized that Rick's resistance stemmed from a deep-seated fear of vulnerability. The notion of admitting mistakes or showing empathy was foreign to him, and Adam wondered how to bridge that gap. Rick, Adam said, his tone softer, I understand that it's frustrating. But if we don't at least try to understand where people are coming from, we'll never be able to improve the situation. Rick remained silent for a moment, considering Adam's words. The tension hung in the air, and Adam hoped he was making some headway. You know, I've had some tough encounters out there too, Adam added. But I've also seen what happens when we open the lines of communication. It can change everything. The conversation felt like a small victory. While Rick still appeared skeptical, Adam sensed a flicker of curiosity behind his hardened exterior. Maybe, just maybe, he could shift Rick's perspective. In the following weeks, the outreach program continued to thrive, with more officers expressing interest in participating. Adam organized training sessions focused on communication skills, conflict de-escalation, and cultural awareness. These sessions were vital, as they helped officers build empathy and understand the communities they served. But just as things seemed to be improving, the department faced a significant challenge. A high-profile incident involving police use of force made headlines, reigniting community outrage and scrutiny. Protests erupted and tensions escalated between officers and residents. Adam felt the pressure mounting. We can't let this derail everything we've worked for, he said during a department meeting, where officers voiced their frustrations over the protests. We have to be proactive and show the community that we're listening. Rick chimed in, his voice raised. Listening? They don't want to listen to us. They want to blame us for everything. The room erupted into a heated discussion, and Adam struggled to keep control. This isn't about blame, it's about understanding, he insisted, his voice firm. If we want to rebuild trust, we have to show them that we're willing to learn from our mistakes. As the chaos in the meeting continued, Adam felt a sense of urgency. The momentum they had built was at risk of unraveling, and he needed to take action. I propose that we hold a community forum in response to this incident, he suggested. We need to address the concerns head-on and show that we're committed to making changes. Some officers nodded, but others scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as another talking session. Adam felt a knot of frustration tighten in his stomach, but he pressed on. This is about more than just us. It's about the community's safety and trust. We can't ignore their feelings. After what felt like hours of back and forth, the chief finally interjected. Let's set it up, he said, surprising Adam. We need to face the music. If we want to improve our relationship with the community, we can't hide from these conversations. Adam felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he knew the road ahead would be challenging. Organizing the forum would require careful planning, and he wanted to ensure it was a genuine opportunity for dialogue rather than a platform for defensiveness. In the days leading up to the event, Adam poured his energy into preparing. He reached out to community leaders, activists, and residents, inviting them to share their stories and concerns. The response was overwhelming, with many eager to participate and express their frustrations. Finally, the day of the community forum arrived. The venue was packed, a mix of officers and residents coming together, united by the shared goal of understanding and accountability. Adam stood at the front, heart racing as he surveyed the crowd. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice steady. This is a chance for us to listen, to learn, and to begin the healing process. As the forum progressed, residents shared their experiences, recounting painful encounters with the police. Each story was met with compassion from some officers, while others struggled to remain open. Adam facilitated the discussions, encouraging honesty and empathy. "We're here to listen, not to defend our actions," he reminded the group. "This is about understanding how we can do better." Despite the initial tension, the forum began to shift into a constructive dialogue. Residents voiced their concerns about policing practices, and some officers expressed their frustrations about the challenges they faced on the streets. Rick, who had attended reluctantly, found himself compelled to share. "I get that you're frustrated," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "But we're not just out there to hurt people. We're trying to keep everyone safe, including ourselves." The room fell silent and Adam sensed a shift. "That's a crucial point, Rick," he responded, looking around the room. "We're all here because we care. Let's find ways to work together instead of against each other." As the forum drew to a close, Adam felt a sense of hope. They had navigated difficult conversations, and while there was still much work to be done, he believed they were making progress. The tension that had once filled the room was now replaced by a tentative sense of understanding. But as the crowd dispersed, Adam knew that the real challenge lay ahead. They needed to turn these conversations into action, to show the community that their voices mattered and that the department was committed to real change. And he was prepared to fight for that change, no matter the obstacles they faced. In the weeks following the community forum, the atmosphere in the precinct began to shift. Adam felt a renewed sense of purpose as officers who had previously been resistant started to engage more openly with the community. Conversations flowed more freely, and there was a palpable shift toward accountability and understanding. Adam's efforts to foster a collaborative environment were slowly bearing fruit. He noticed Rick attending training sessions, actively participating, and even voicing his opinions. It was a small victory, but one that filled Adam with hope. One afternoon, as Adam was reviewing feedback from the recent community forum, he received a call from the chief's office. "Adam, we need you to lead a task force on community policing initiatives," the chief stated. "Your outreach work has shown promise and we want to build on that momentum." Feeling both honored and daunted, Adam replied, "I'd be happy to take it on. What's the focus?" "We want to create actionable strategies that officers can implement on the ground. This includes improving training, enhancing community relations, and finding ways to engage with residents proactively," the chief explained. "That sounds great. I believe we can make a real difference if we work together," Adam said, excitement bubbling beneath the surface. "I'll gather a team and start outlining our goals." As he hung up the phone, Adam felt a surge of adrenaline. This was an opportunity to make systemic changes within the department, and he was determined to seize it. He quickly assembled a diverse team, including officers from different ranks and backgrounds, as well as community representatives who could offer valuable insights. During their first meeting, Adam laid out the task force's goals. "We want to build bridges with our community, improve our training protocols, and ensure that our officers are equipped to handle situations with empathy and understanding," he said, looking around the room at the engaged faces. Rick, sitting to Adam's right, added, "We can't just be reactive. We need to be proactive. Let's identify potential problems before they escalate." "Exactly," Adam agreed. "Let's create a plan that focuses on prevention. We need to think outside the box and develop new strategies that prioritize community engagement." As the task force delved into their discussions, they brainstormed a variety of initiatives, from implementing regular community meetings to establishing mentorship programs between officers and local youth. They also discussed the importance of transparency, recognizing that building trust meant being open about their policies and practices. But amid this enthusiasm, challenges arose. Some officers were resistant to the proposed changes, clinging to traditional policing methods. They questioned the effectiveness of community engagement, insisting that their primary role was to enforce the law. One afternoon, during a heated discussion, an officer voiced his frustration. "We're not social workers. We're here to uphold the law, not make friends." Adam took a deep breath, aware that these conversations were crucial. "I get that enforcing the law is our primary responsibility, but it's not mutually exclusive with building relationships. If we engage with our community, we can better understand their needs and concerns, which can ultimately help us do our jobs more effectively." Another officer chimed in, "But what if we open ourselves up to criticism? What if we make a mistake?" "That's part of being accountable," Adam replied. "Mistakes happen, but acknowledging them and learning from them is how we grow as a department. It's about building a culture of trust." As the discussions continued, Adam encouraged his colleagues to consider the long-term benefits of fostering positive relationships. "Think about the times when residents might hesitate to report a crime because they fear us. If we change that dynamic, we not only enhance community safety but also create a more supportive environment for our officers. Gradually the room began to shift. Some officers nodded, contemplating Adam's words. While the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, he could sense a growing willingness to engage in the process. Over the next few months, the task force implemented various initiatives. They organized community cleanup events, youth sports leagues, and educational workshops about police procedures. Officers were encouraged to participate actively, building rapport with residents outside of traditional policing contexts. The change didn't happen overnight, but small victories began to accumulate. Residents expressed appreciation for the increased visibility of officers in their neighborhoods, and many shared positive experiences at community events. The tide of public opinion started to shift, and Adam felt a growing sense of pride in the progress they were making. However, amidst this positive momentum, Adam received an unexpected visit from his former supervisor, the one who had once been skeptical of his outreach efforts. "I wanted to see what you've been up to," she said, her tone neutral. "I've heard some good things." "Thanks for coming by," Adam replied, surprised but pleased. "We're really working hard to foster relationships with the community and improve our practices." She raised an eyebrow. "It sounds ambitious, but do you think it'll last?" "It's easy to have these conversations, but what happens when the next incident arises?" "That's exactly why we're doing this," Adam insisted. "We want to create a foundation of trust that can withstand challenges. It's about building relationships, not just band-aid solutions." She nodded, a hint of respect in her gaze. "Well, I hope you can keep this momentum going. It's not an easy task and there will always be resistance." Adam smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "I know it won't be easy, but we're committed to making it work. We're determined to change the narrative." As their conversation continued, Adam felt a growing sense of confidence. He had faced skepticism, resistance, and challenges, yet the vision he had fought for was slowly becoming a reality. He realized that change was possible, but it required tenacity, patience, and a willingness to engage in uncomfortable conversations. With each step forward, Adam became more convinced that the seeds of change were taking root. While the road ahead would still be filled with hurdles, he believed in the importance of persistence. Together with his colleagues, he was ready to push forward, armed with a vision of a department that valued understanding, respect, and accountability. The morning of the annual police community picnic arrived, and Adam felt a blend of excitement and nervousness. This event had been in the works for months, and it represented a culmination of all the efforts made by the task force to foster better relationships between the police and the community. The park was adorned with colorful banners, and tables filled with food were set up alongside various activity stations for families to enjoy. As Adam arrived, he was greeted by a bustling atmosphere. Families laughed, children played, and officers mingled with community members. It was a scene he had envisioned, yet it still felt surreal to see it come to life. He wandered through the crowd, exchanging greetings with residents and officers alike, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him. Amidst the festivities, Rick approached Adam with a newfound energy. "This is amazing, Adam. I never thought we could pull something like this off," he admitted, a smile breaking through his typically stoic demeanor. "I'm glad you're enjoying it," Adam replied, surprised but pleased. "It's all about building connections. The more we interact, the more we can understand each other." Rick nodded, his enthusiasm evident. "I've been talking to some of the kids at the basketball station. They're excited to see us here. It's nice to know that they want to engage with us." As the day unfolded, residents began to share their stories and experiences with the officers, breaking down the walls that had once separated them. Conversations flowed naturally and laughter filled the air. Adam watched as officers participated in games, engaged with families, and even took part in a friendly soccer match. The highlight of the event came when the chief addressed the crowd. "Today is about more than just fun. It's about recognizing the importance of community and partnership. We're committed to serving you better and listening to your concerns." As the crowd cheered, Adam felt a surge of pride. This was a significant moment, one that reflected the progress they had made together. It was a reminder that their efforts had not been in vain and that they were beginning to change the narrative surrounding policing in their community. But as the sun began to set, a familiar unease crept in. Adam couldn't shake the feeling that challenges still lurked around the corner. Despite the positive atmosphere, he was acutely aware that trust was fragile and could be easily shattered. Later in the evening, as the picnic began to wind down, Adam overheard a group of officers discussing a recent incident involving a fellow officer. "Did you hear about the arrest last night?" one of them said, shaking his head. "It's going to bring all that negativity back." Adam felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew that one negative incident could threaten the progress they had made. Sensing the urgency, he approached the group. "What happened?" he asked, wanting to gather information firsthand. "Apparently, an officer used excessive force during an arrest. It's already made headlines," another officer replied, frustration evident in his voice. "And it's going to undermine everything we've worked for." Adam took a deep breath, focusing on maintaining his composure. "We can't let this derail our progress. We need to respond thoughtfully and transparently." Rick chimed in, "We should have a follow-up meeting with the community to address this. It's important that they know we're committed to accountability." "That's a great idea," Adam agreed. "We need to demonstrate that we take these situations seriously and that we're willing to learn from our mistakes." As they discussed their next steps, Adam felt a renewed sense of determination. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was confident that their efforts were paving the way for a brighter future. In the days that followed, the department organized a community meeting to address the incident. Adam stood at the front, ready to facilitate the discussion. The room was filled with concerned residents and fellow officers, the atmosphere charged with tension. "Thank you all for being here," Adam began, looking around the room. "We want to address the recent incident openly and honestly. Your voices matter and we're here to listen." As residents voiced their concerns and frustrations, Adam listened intently, nodding in understanding. He encouraged dialogue, allowing community members to share their experiences and feelings. "We acknowledge the pain this incident has caused, and we're committed to ensuring that it doesn't happen again," he assured them. Rick, sitting in the front row, shared his thoughts as well. "We know that we have to be better. This isn't just about policing, it's about respect and understanding. We're here to serve and we need to earn that trust." The meeting concluded with a sense of resolution. Residents appreciated the transparency and willingness to address the issue, but Adam knew that the real work lay ahead. It was about consistently demonstrating accountability and learning from mistakes. As Adam left the meeting, he felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. Change was not linear, and the challenges ahead would require continuous effort. However, he also felt the weight of the progress they had made, realizing that they were on a path toward a more equitable relationship with the community. In the months that followed, the department implemented new training protocols focused on de-escalation techniques and community engagement. They partnered with local organizations to create programs aimed at fostering dialogue and understanding between officers and residents. Adam felt a renewed sense of purpose as he witnessed the gradual changes taking shape. Officers began to embrace their roles as community advocates, engaging with residents in meaningful ways. The positive momentum continued, and the department saw a noticeable decline in complaints and an increase in community trust. One day, as Adam walked through a neighborhood he had frequented during his outreach efforts, a young girl approached him. "Officer Adam," she called out, waving excitedly. "Are you coming to our community event next week?" Adam smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it for the world." As he continued on his way, Adam couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The journey had been arduous, filled with obstacles and setbacks, but it had also been marked by growth, understanding, and renewed hope. In the years to come, Adam remained dedicated to fostering positive relationships between the police and the community. He knew that the work was never truly done, but he felt optimistic about the future. The experience had taught him invaluable lessons about the importance of empathy, communication, and accountability. He understood that change required continuous effort and a commitment to learning from both successes and failures. And so, Adam continued to advocate for a police force that prioritized understanding, respect, and community engagement. With each conversation, each event, and each relationship built, he was confident that they were moving closer to a new era of policing, one that was rooted in trust and collaboration, where justice truly prevailed for all.